It's up to you. What's your pleasure? Everyone around the world, come on. Yeah. It's your celebration. Celebrate good times, come on. Celebrate good times, come on.
There's a party going on right here, a celebration to last throughout the years.
So bring your good times and your laughter too.
We gon' celebrate your party with you. Come on now.
We're gonna have a good time tonight. Let's celebrate. It's alright. Celebrate good times, come on. Celebrate good times, come on. We gonna celebrate your party with you. Come on.
All right, welcome everyone. We're gonna do some housekeeping up front, but as folks come on in, make sure you put in your name, where you're calling from, and one of the reasons you came by today. I saw some folks already did, and I see it from throughout the state, so it's really exciting to see people from all over. And I'm gonna start us off with some introductions. My name is Juan Carlos. I use he/him pronouns. I'm with Caring Cross Generations, and I'm joined here by my co-MC Lahia.
Hey everybody, I'm Ligia with Senior and Disability Action, and I wanted to talk to you guys about language justice and how we are ensuring that we do that in this meeting. So we're gonna have interpretation in Spanish and also a closed captioning. So if you can go on your screen and select the globe, and in that globe is going to give you the options to choose English or Spanish, and then you can mute the original audio. So para garantizar la justicia lingüística, vamos a tener interpretación en español y también tenemos subtítulos. Así es que sí, por favor pueden irse al globo terráqueo y escoger, cuando hagan el clic, ahí les va a dar la opción de tener inglés o español. Escojan el idioma que necesitan y luego pongan en mudo el audio original. Back to you, Juan Carlos.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for that, Lahia. We are also gonna have CART, which is live captioning during the actual program. So if you're wanting that, please click onto the three dots and click on closed captioning, which will be made available throughout. And that will be another means to also keep up with it as we go along. And for now, we're going to go on to our purpose, our agenda, and some group agreements. I see some familiar faces, but it's always nice to have a grounding moment about recognizing the space, some of our goals, and why we're all here today. So as for who we are the LTSS for All Grassroots Coalition. And we are made up of older adults, people with disabilities, chronic health conditions, and home care providers, both paid and unpaid. And we are families, neighbors, and friends who support one another. And we are a growing grassroots movement who believe we all deserve to live and age with dignity and work. Can you go next slide? So for today's agenda, we're going to do the welcome. We're going to go to some of the propositions that we're encouraging folks to vote yes on, as well as some of the propositions we're encouraging folks to vote no on. But throughout the process, feel free to do ask questions. These are confusingly worded propositions at times, and we have experts here to field some of the questions, give context as to which way they're being presented, and being able to really tie in how these propositions really interact with our care systems. LTSS for all doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's various components to it. And as we work to address those systemic inequities, we need to be cognizant of how these inequities interact with LTSS and how to be able to really make sure that as we advance towards that universal system for everybody, we do it in a way that uplifts everyone and addresses the many inequities along the way. So I know propositions aren't always the funnest thing to read. Sometimes you need to read them a couple of times. So we're really hoping that as we go through today's program, do feel free to drop questions in the chat and being able to interact with it as much as you can so that you can make the decisions when it comes down to the propositions, when it comes time to vote. And with that, I'll just go through some group agreements and then hand it over to Lahia. So as we interact with the program, I just want to remind folks that we use one mic here. We share the air. So as you make space, also take space, and we listen with respect, disagree with kindness, support access for everyone so that we can all participate, to take care of yourself and respect others' privacy, and lastly, have fun. So with those group agreements, agenda out of the way, I want to hand it back over to Lahia to get us started with some of our propositions.
So we're gonna be watching some videos. These videos were put together by CARA, and there's gonna be Prop 3, 5, 6, 32, and 33, and Jody will be answering your questions. So pay attention to those videos and see if you have any questions and put them in the chat so they can be answered, okay? Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Assemblymember Chris Ward from San Diego, and I'm also the Vice Chair of the California Legislative LGBTQ Caucus, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about Proposition 3 on the November ballot. So what Proposition 3 will do is enshrine marriage equality for all in our state constitution. And this is critically important because when you go back to the year 2008, regrettably, California voters actually passed Proposition 8, which limited who can get married in our state. Now, since 2015, thanks to a federal court case in Obergefell, we have had the right for marriage equality nationwide, and that superseded any language that Proposition 8 put in our Constitution. However, we are incredibly nervous about the activist right-wing Supreme Court that we saw that recently just overturned protections under Roe v. Wade. And we know through that language that they used in that decision that they want to overturn Obergefell. They want to roll back our rights and our freedoms to be able to get married. So the legislature this year put ACA 5 on the ballot, which has now become Proposition 3. It will take out and eliminate that horrible language that we had in Proposition 8 and replace it with an affirmative statement that ensures the right for everybody to get married to whom they love here in the state of California in our state constitution. So we hope that you agree, along with the clear supermajority of California voters, that it is the right thing to do to be able to support people in whom they love, and vote yes on Proposition 3.
In 2022, voters in Berkeley were asked whether they wanted the city to borrow $650 million to fund affordable housing. 59% of the voters who turned out, an overwhelming majority, said yes. The measure failed. How is that possible, and how would a statewide proposition on this year's ballot change the electoral math behind borrowing? Hi, I'm Ben Christopher, housing reporter with Cal Matters, and this is Prop 5 in a minute. Back in the 1970s, Californians voted to make it much harder for local governments to raise taxes or borrow money. Ever since then, whenever a city or county wants to go into debt, they have to get permission from the voters. Not only that, in most cases, they have to win the support of at least 2/3 of voters to win. That's why the bond in Berkeley failed, even though it got 59% of the vote. Prop 5 would reduce the threshold for bonds that fund affordable housing and the whole list of public infrastructure projects. The new cutoff, 55%. Supporters say the current system makes it way too hard for local governments to fund important projects, including affordable housing. They also argue that letting a small minority override the wishes of the majority is just undemocratic. Opponents say the choice to go into debt should be made only when there's a broad agreement across the community, especially since bonds tend to get paid back through higher taxes on property owners. So, vote yes if you want to make it easier for local governments to borrow to fund affordable housing and other infrastructure. Vote no if you want to keep things the way they are. To learn more about everything on your 2024 ballot, go to calmatters.org. For Cal Matters, this is Ben Christopher.
Hi, I'm Cecilia Aguiar-Curry. I represent the 4th Assembly District, which includes Napa, Yolo, Colusa, and Lake Counties and parts of Sonoma. I want to talk to you about Proposition 5 and why your support in November is so important. You know, before I served in the Assembly, I worked in local government. I was a planning commissioner, a city council member, a mayor, and I also served on regional water projects, housing projects, and transportation agencies. So I know firsthand how hard it is to get local projects done. It takes a partnership between folks at the local level, like yourselves, your communities, and where you have lived and raised your families, and the local leaders you elect, to help develop and plan and enrich the towns and communities that you live in. So now more than ever, our local communities are struggling. They cannot afford new infrastructure or cannot afford affordable housing projects. They can't afford to get flood protection or to build a new fire station. And the need is in every single community. Every single community is different, which is why we need to return the power to local governments. Proposition 5 is about local jobs. It's about local investment. It's about local control and local accountability. It simply gives you, the voter, an opportunity to weigh in on the local priorities that are meaningful to your community. Because no one knows best, no one, what the needs are in your community. So whether it's a new library or it's a new fire station or hospital, affordable senior or veteran housing or other critical infrastructure projects, Prop 5 is the tool that will help revive our communities, the way each community decides. So more importantly, Prop 5 is about voter protection. It is crafted to keep local governments accountable, transparent, and fiscally responsible to their constituents. And Prop 5's initiative requires a 55% supermajority for passage. So I cannot stress how critical your support is in November. Thank you for taking the time to educate yourselves about this ballot measure. And remember, Prop 5 will help your community thrive. Thank you very much. Don't forget to vote for Prop 5.
Hello, California. Today, we're discussing a crucial and transformative measure on the upcoming ballot, Proposition 6. This initiative aims to end involuntary servitude in our state once and for all. Involuntary servitude is slavery, plain and simple. It's a practice that has no place in a just and modern society. Yet remnants of this archaic system still persist in California. Involuntary servitude refers to situations where people are forced to work against their will, under the threat of punishment. It's a form of modern-day slavery that strips people of their basic human rights and dignity.
And I think that we all can agree that consent is something that's sacred. You know, it's something that we should really, really fight and defend, you know. And I think that when it comes to incarcerated people, for whatever reason, we've left this population vulnerable to not having that right to consent. And it's kind of like, well, once you're incarcerated, you know, you lose that right, and you get to just, you know, be forced into whatever the state deems is necessary. When I don't think that that's, you know, that's right, that's just, or that, again, aligns with California's value.
Involuntary servitude is another word for slavery. You know, not, I guess, you know, they can dress it up, you know, but, you know, this pig still got lipstick, but it's still a pig. You know, and to the most part, the fight for California, because the fight for California is only part of the fight. And what we think that's happening in California that makes us really distinct is we're trying to not eliminate it just in the Constitution. We're trying to fight to change the practice of slavery.
Currently, our state constitution allows involuntary servitude as punishment for crime. This loophole has been used to exploit and mistreat incarcerated people, perpetuating a cycle of injustice and inequality. Proposition 6 will amend our state constitution to prohibit involuntary servitude without exceptions. By voting yes on Proposition 6, we are standing up against modern-day slavery. We are affirming that involuntary servitude is unacceptable in any form. Together, we can ensure that our state reflects the values of justice, equality, and freedom.
Hi, my name is Lorena Gonzalez, and I'm president of the California Federation of Labor Unions. We're excited that CARA is coming out to help in this year's election, as you always do. But one of our priorities, and one of the priorities of you as well, should be the $18 minimum wage. A lot of people don't realize just how important this is because we've made so many gains. We got to $15, we got to $16, we have $20 for fast food workers, we're getting to $25 for healthcare workers. So there are a lot of people who are like, well, what do we need? We need people who are making the minimum to be able to have a living wage, to be able to, if they work hard enough, 40 hours a week, that they should be able to live. $18 won't do it on its own, but it'll start to get them there. And it has an escalator, so that will increase every single year. We've got to stand up not just for union workers, but workers who wish they had a union. Those workers who are currently toiling at $16 an hour and can't make it in most parts of California. So we're glad you're joining us. I want to, hopefully we'll go out there and be successful at changing this for all those workers who desperately need a raise.
Hi, CARA. My name is Francisco. I'm the Executive Director of Housing Now, and I'm going to walk you through the Justice for Renters Act, what it is and what it does. Prop 33 would restore the right of local communities to expand rent control. Currently, on our books in California, we have a law called the Costa-Hawkins Act, which limited what local cities could do with respect to their local rent control. So if you are a family that lived in a single family home or a condo, that was a type of property that Costa-Hawkins prohibited local cities from covering under rent control. Also, any building built after 1995, or in the case of Los Angeles, 1978, in San Francisco, 1979, the years that rent control was established in those cities. The other way that Costa-Hawkins limits what local cities can do is that it prevents them from establishing any type of control once an old tenant moves out and a new tenant moves in. So this is what's called vacancy decontrol, and that means that landlords can raise the rent as much as they'd like on the next tenant. So local governments will be able to cover these types of properties under their rent control, but it doesn't mean that they have to. The actual text of the proposition just says that the state cannot limit the right of any city or county or city and county to maintain, enact, or expand rent control, residential rent control. Now, the opponents say that this will cause developers to build less, and NIMBY cities will pass strong rent control in order to prevent new housing. Our coalition says we need both rent control and greater public investment in affordable housing, and that we need elected officials that support both of these at all levels of government. In fact, we actually have a campaign going right now called 1 Million Homes, where we're calling on Governor Newsom to fully fund his goal of 1 million affordable homes by 2030. So I'm hoping you all can support that campaign as well. Check it out at 1millionhomesca.org. Now, there's a bunch of ways that Costa-Hawkins is making it worse in terms of our rising rents. For one, it is contributing to the dwindling amount of housing stock that is covered by rent control. In places that have rent control, but you have these properties that are not covered and there's a lot of demand, well, in those areas, it is continuing to drive up rents. It also means that landlords are able to, are incentivized to really get rid of long-term tenants because they're going to be able to charge new tenants as much as they'd like. And what we have seen that corporate landlords have really rushed into this area, particularly buying single-family homes because they know they can rent them out at, and won't be regulated. Those rents won't be regulated by local jurisdictions. Now, rent control polls very well, but most renters do not have any type of rent control, and so it does lend itself to being confused by the opposition. The campaign for Prop 33 is focusing on their motto, the rent is too damn high. If you support that, you want to support Prop 33. The opposition is really backed by corporate real estate interests. The California Apartment Association has put in $10 million, and the California Association of Realtors has put in $22 million. In particular, they have set up this new fund called Homeownership for Families, where they not only are opposing Prop 33, but they're also opposing Prop 5, which actually is something that makes it easier for local governments to fund affordable housing. And I point that out to show how disingenuous our opposition is in calling out that rent control will make it harder to build more housing when they themselves are opposing a policy that would make it easier to build. And so I'm hoping that this answers your questions on Prop 33 and that we continue to get your support. Thanks.
Where will I live?
Where will I live?
Where will I live?
Support rent control now.
Wow, great videos, right? So now we're gonna have Jody answer some of the questions. I have a couple of questions on the chat, and if you have a question, please raise your hand. You can go on the bottom of your Zoom, and you can click either on reactions or raise hand. Okay, when you have the reactions, you can check on reactions, and then it's gonna give you the option. The first question that we have is from Hannah. Oh no, sorry. It's from Harry, and it says, no, it's from Hannah. Actually, it is from Hannah. It's for the marriage. Oh God, it's moving. Does marriage equality include people with disabilities who relied on benefits?
Yes.
Thank you. And then we have for Prop 5. For Proposition 5, is there a required accountability provision such as bond oversight committee?
Not at the state level, but in the proposition, it requires a local community that chooses to present and try to pass a bond locally to have transparency and oversight. But there
Thank you,
won't be a state agency. It will be up to each local community who wants to pass a bond measure to provide that oversight.
Thank you. We have Guillermina.
Gracias, muy buenas tardes, Guillermina Castellanos. Estoy sorprendida de estas proposiciones. Me encanta el video. Creo que es sumamente importante, no solamente para las personas que votan, sino para las personas también que no votan, porque tienen sus hijos que votan y, y eso va a ayudar a tener mejor claridad de cuáles son las proposiciones.
Do you want to translate that, Nakia?
Okay. Okay, so Guillermina said that she's excited with the videos, that she really liked the content, and that is very important because this is give you a clear idea of what the propositions are and what is at stake, and this is important not just for the older adults, but also for children of older adults, so to be informed on how to vote.
And I will say that everybody who registered today is going to get a copy of the slate card that has the positions on all of the measures we're presenting today, not just the videos, but you're going to hear about a couple others, and we're going to email that. So look in your email, because you're going to get that. So you'll be able to share it with other people and encourage them to vote too.
Thank you, Jody. We have another question about.
Mi pregunta todavía no terminaba.
Okay.
A mí me gustaría si pueden compartir estas vías positivas para compartirlas con nuestra membresía. Llegan como 60 personas. Entonces, entre ellas tienen hijos ciudadanos que son los que pueden votar. Los padres no pueden votar, pero los hijos sí pueden votar. Entonces, esa era mi.
Yeah. So Guillermina is asking if these videos can be shared, because she would like to share this with their membership, so they can also be informed, and even if they cannot vote, their children can, and so this is important for them to have this information.
Yes, we're recording this today. So all of the organizations that are part of putting this on will have the recording available. It'll be on our website, californiaalliance.org, but I'm sure all of the other groups, SDA, Caring Across Generations, Hand in Hand, California Pan-Ethnic Network, all of us, San Francisco Rising, will have access to this. So if you want to get it, you can look on our website or call us, and we'll see that we get it to you so you can share it.
Thank you, Jody. We have another question on Prop 3. If a federal ban on marriage equality passes, would this still protect Californians?
Yes, that is exactly why we're doing this, because we want it in our Constitution and a California Constitution that we have marriage equality. So, like in the Roe versus Wade decision federally, it reversed the protections, and many states, like California, have our own protections in our Constitution. So we still allow women reproductive choice, access to care, access to abortions. Other states have put it in their constitution to ban it, just like the federal government did. And so now people are traveling to states like ours to get the care that they need. We want the same marriage protection. That's why it has to be in our Constitution, so that whatever this horrible Supreme Court does, we are protected here in California.
Thank you, Jody. A question from Patricia Clark. How does CARA come to decisions on ballot measures, support or opposition?
Well, we're doing this. This obviously is a coalitional effort, but fortunately, all of the other members of the coalition agree with us. But the way we do it is we have a legislative committee that is statewide. Several people on this Zoom today are members of it, and they review propositions as well as legislation and make recommendations. On the recommendations for ballot measures, it has to then go to our full board for final approval. And on some piece of legislation as well. So that is how we do it. I'm not sure how the other groups that are part of this coalition do it, but that is how we do it. So we have a couple of checkpoints to make sure that we're taking positions consistent with our mission and our values.
Another question from Sharon Espinosa. Does Prop 6 mean incarcerated individuals will earn?
Well, they do earn now.
Kobe, Rabbi Jim. Good. You got a second?
We need to mute. There he goes. Okay. So Proposition 6, right now, workers, some of them in prisons do get paid. Yesterday, we learned about one prison that pays 32 cents an hour. And then they have to use that money if they want to buy something from the commissary or whatever. They're not paid a living wage at all. Some get paid nothing, but are still forced to work. And if they say no, then privileges are taken away, like visitors privileges, outside privileges, parole hearing dates pushed back. And many people in prison cannot work. Just like our country is aging, the prison population is also aging. And many of the jobs require a lot of physical ability, and many of the older folks, they just can't do it. Or they have an illness that makes it impossible for them to work. And then others may want to take advantage of educational programs, substance abuse or mental health counseling, and if forced to work for no or little pay, they won't be able to deal with the issues that really got them in prison in the first place. So obviously, we think people should be paid a decent wage and maybe have access to their earnings when released. I'm not sure how that system works. I don't right now. But if they cannot or do not want to work, they shouldn't be forced to, whether they're paid or not.
Thank you, Jody. And we save a few seconds, so I'm passing it to Juan.
So are we moving on? Is that the end of Q&A?
I think so. I
Okay.
didn't have any more questions. Oh, yeah, this,
You didn't read the questions that I had up there.
oh,
Go ahead
CT
and
Weber.
ask.
hold on. I thought that that was,
There were two of them in the same.
Why don't you just ask it?
yeah, can you ask her, please?
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's my understanding that originally that the proposition was going to have a reduction in both special taxes and bonds, and that they removed the special taxes part. That only left the regressive bonds part. And I say regressive because it's really bonds are a regressive tax on poor people, basically, that benefits the wealthy. The other part was that Prop 5, there's a new thing put in there where you could not buy existing single member homes and convert them into affordable units. And I think that was a deal with the enemy to try and get them to stop spending money against it. But anyway, those are two things that I wanted to have addressed.
On the first point, yes, it's on bonds, and you need a 55% majority to pass a bond measure for infrastructure. On the question of single-family homes, the way that the attorneys interpreted the language is that this is a forward-looking measure on the ballot. So anything that currently exists is exempt, like single-family homes that are already built. This is for either new construction, new or infrastructure repair. And they took out, maybe because of the pushing by the real estate industry, I don't know, but they took out the bonds being able to be used for existing properties. And the bond is for future costs for infrastructure or housing. That's my interpretation. And if anybody has anything to add on that, please put it in the chat. Because I think
I was just wondering if you knew why they removed the special tax.
I do not know why. Sorry, I don't know why.
Okay.
All right.
So we have Keith. Could you unmute yourself?
Yes, this is Keith Yamamoto. I want to compliment what Jody was saying on those two initiatives. And let me go first to the bond measure and reduce it to 55%. Part of the reason why bond measures are so important is that it addresses certain needs that aren't going to be those investments on infrastructure and affordable housing are not going to be supported by the current laws. There needs to be additional resources for that. And yes, the cost of those bonds are spread throughout their entire revenue sources from those jurisdictions. But at the same time, if we don't do the bonds, the affordable housing, the infrastructure very likely will not be constructed. So you weigh one versus the other, and yeah, some of the beneficiaries are the companies that administer those projects, but the outcome of those projects benefit everyone within those communities.
They removed the special taxes because
know
the
what?
bonds are going
I
to cost
think
twice as much.
we
Okay.
should
Yeah.
not have a debate here, but
Yeah, sorry.
you guys can communicate on chat if you'd like, but I know we have to move on. So
Yes. Thank you so much, Jody. Yes, if you have any more comments, please use the chat, and we're gonna move to the next segment, and I'm gonna pass it on to Juan Carlos. Thank you.
Wait, give me 1 second. I think I'm introducing Kay, correct?
yes.
Wonderful. I'll be introducing Kay Yamamoto from California Pan Ethnic Health Network to introduce our next set of propositions, followed by SF Rising. But first, Kay.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks so much for allowing me to speak today and share a little bit about Prop 35. I'm with the California Pan Ethnic Health Network. We're a statewide health equity advocacy organization focused on advocating for policies that reduce racial disparities in health outcomes and disparities among all historically marginalized communities in health outcomes. Prop 35 is, you'll see this on the ballot. I'm sure you've seen a lot about it from Planned Parenthood and other providers. And we, CPEN alongside Children's Partnership, California, CARA, Courage California, League of Women Voters, and a coalition of other organizations, both in health equity and advocating for democracy, are choosing to oppose this and urging others and voters to oppose this. And you can go to the next slide. And just a brief disclaimer, we usually support Planned Parenthood, we usually support community clinics, and we definitely support Medi-Cal and supporting providers. This, though, is we have some severe concerns on how this will affect the disabled community, elderly community, and communities of color. What will Prop 35 do? So number one, it's dealing with something called the Managed Care Organization Tax, which is a tax on Medi-Cal health plans and private health plans. It's not a new tax. This is already in place, and it's locking up the revenue that comes from this fund, which on any given year is several $billions, and directing it towards very specific and rigid buckets of spending, which I'll break down in a minute. In general, mostly this money would go towards increasing payments to providers. On the ballot, you might see it as saying it's making this Medi-Cal funding permanent. That's half true. The other half of that is we actually do need federal approval in order to do that. So it's not totally up to California or the people and voters of California. You can go to the next slide. And this is happening now because there's discontent among a coalition of providers and hospitals and how the Managed Care Organization Tax, or MCO tax, was distributed and the budget negotiation process to get to that point, which includes many of the priorities of the LTSS for All Coalition, CARA, and CPEN. And you could go to the next slide. We just want to also highlight that the funding of the Yes on Prop 35 campaign has the top three funders. On the GMR with 11 million, that's a private equity firm, so it's like, you know, hedge fund, extremely wealthy interest. California Hospital Associations and California Medical Associations, and both have historically not been on the side of expanding access to healthcare for all, regardless of status or health. Go to the next slide, please. So here's a few of our concerns. Number one, it's very confusing. It's very wonky. It shouldn't be on the ballot, but it is. Number two, it's passing Prop 35 will create a $12 billion hole in the budget over the next 3 years. That just means we would have to be faced with the severe reality of severe cuts. And the cuts would come not only towards Medi-Cal programs, but they'd also come towards social safety net programs. Many of the policies that we advocated for in this space, like long-term support services, in-home support care, private duty nursing, community health workers, would be rolled back, and also funding for coverage of children 0 to 5 years old. So that is not going to be included in the Prop 35 funding, and unless the tax revenue is astronomical, it'll be it won't get funded. And we could go to the next slide, and we can go to questions after that. And this is just a breakdown of what's currently funded and what's not. What's currently funded by this budget, what would not be funded, and what would be funded if Prop 35 passes. And I think there's one more slide, and we can quickly just do questions. And this is also explaining how we came to the current budget, which is that we advocated, we worked with the legislature to put forth policies and priorities of what should get funded. This process would go away with MCO, with how we deal with the MCO tax money if Prop 35 passes. So hopefully I was able to answer some questions regarding this, and yeah, we would like to please urge people to vote no. If you'd like more information, I'll leave my email in the chat, and I'd love to follow up. And if there's any questions, happy to also answer. Yes, Laura.
Hi, my name is Laura Schuckler. I'm with the California Primary Care Association, which is the statewide association that represents the nearly 1,300 community health centers across California. I don't have a question, but I did want to jump in really quickly with a slightly different perspective that we feel like is super important. CPCA is one of the proud co-sponsors of Prop 35. And just want to share there are over 300 organizations across the state who do endorse Prop 35, including over 120 community health centers. So I really appreciate your presentation. CPEM's a really valued and trusted partner for us at CPCA. And at the same time, we feel like Prop 35 is incredibly important for reaching health equity and really expanding services under Medi-Cal. California has done an amazing job expanding Medi-Cal coverage in California, but in reality, patients are still having a hard time accessing care, whether that's finding a Medi-Cal provider who will accept Medi-Cal coverage, or long wait times for appointments, or being able to access specialty care. We know for our community health centers, getting access to mammograms and colonoscopies sometimes takes 8 to 12 months to access that care. So we just want to say we are extremely supportive of Prop 35 here. And just really quickly, in terms of flexibility of the spending in Prop 35, actually, while there are discrete buckets that were really intentionally made to make sure this holistically does cover Medi-Cal spending across the entire system, including primary care, specialty care, community health centers, reproductive health, community health workers, workforce.
My apologies. I just want to make sure that I leave room for other questions, and because we have a presenter afterwards too.
Sure.
Using the chat function, I'd really appreciate it. And I also wanted to open the floor to Jeffrey, who also had a question, and then we should be able to go on to the next speaker. And folks who always use the chat function to ask additional questions or follow-ups. Kay will be around as well as the other speakers if you have questions about this proposition or other ones in the past. But Jeffrey.
It's okay. We'll make it simple if you can hear me. Confirming you can hear me, I'm going to say simple thing is where, because of who is directing the funding now, how does this change who directs the funding for in this proposition?
That's a good question. So there would be a stakeholder committee that's created as a result of Prop 35. And in that committee, there is not a seat for a consumer advocate or a community advocate. Behavioral health also does not have a seat at the stakeholder committee. And the process we used, we wouldn't be able to. That funding would be locked away. We would not be able to advocate for how it gets used. So like I mentioned earlier, that process of going and meeting with legislators, going through that budget negotiation process, we would not be able to advocate in that process for how the MCO tax money gets spent. And I will mention, just in response to Laura, that the way that the funding structure is, it's not necessarily fits the needs or is not aligned with the needs of Medi-Cal.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for that presentation, Kay. Again, if folks want to ask follow-up questions, please use the chat function. On that note, I will hand it over to our next speaker, Sana from San Francisco Rising.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sana with SF Rising. I'm the Communications and Volunteer Manager, and I use she, her pronouns. Am I able to share slides, or is someone able to put up the slides? Oh, cool. Thank you. Yeah, so today I'm going to talk about why we need to defeat Prop 36. You can go to the next slide. So before I jump into Prop 36, I want to go back in time 10 years to 2014, when voters passed something called Prop 47. So Prop 47 reduced certain theft and drug possession offenses from felonies to misdemeanors. So basically, except for people with certain prior convictions. So basically what this meant was, instead of being sentenced to serve time in jail or prison, more people were able to be diverted to community programs that helped actually rehabilitate them and get them what they need to get back into society, instead of being pushed into this revolving door of mass incarceration. And part of this is that when people are labeled a felon, it makes it really difficult to get a job or find housing, and it makes it more likely that they will actually resort to crime to survive. And if people can't get a job, it doesn't really leave them with a lot of options to make ends meet. So Prop 47 was really about opening up more opportunities for people to, have a chance by removing that felon label and putting more money into those diversion programs that get people mental health treatment, rehabilitation, and substance use treatment. And the great thing about Prop 47 was that since it costs so much money to incarcerate someone in California, this number is $133,000 per person per year. We saved $800 million through Prop 47, and that money was instead diverted into these programs that keep us safe. And those programs, are really successful. Recidivism rates, or the rate at which someone returns to incarceration after being released, dropped for people who went through these Prop 47 funded programs from about 42% all the way down to just 15%. So that's the percentage of people who actually return to incarceration. So again, Prop 47 did what it was supposed to do to reduce crime and make our community safer. Next slide, please. But yeah, certain actors since then have, been pushing for kind of this resurgence of failed harsh crime policies. And since 2014, you might have heard that Prop 47 has been blamed for the rise of crime, which you can see here is just not really the case. You can see that line is where Prop 47 took effect. We're not seeing this huge jump in all types of crime. And the crime kind of wave that we're hearing about in the news is a lot more complicated than folks want to make it seem. We're seeing an over-reporting of crime when it's only certain crimes that have actually gone up in the past few years, and we have to consider the pandemic and the resulting economic crisis. And we know when people don't have what they need to survive, crime levels go up. Next slide, please. And so that takes us to this November, where Prop 36 is on the ballot, which would repeal parts of Prop 47. So it would switch back certain crimes from misdemeanors to felonies. Prop 36 is really scary, right? Because it's going to punish poverty, it's going to increase homelessness, and incarcerate people for struggling with things like substance abuse. And it's really going to make our communities less safe because it's defunding in a really massive way these successful programs that have actually worked to reduce, recidivism and have worked to keep us safe. And if we want to get serious about safety, we should be actually funding these programs, these evidence-based solutions. But Prop 36, does the opposite. And we also need to look at, the last time we had kind of a surge of these harsh crime policies was the war on drugs in the 1980s and 90s, where politicians were pushing harsh crime policies that didn't actually stop crime from happening, right? They didn't actually give people what they need. They didn't get to the root causes of why crime happens. And worse yet, they actually caused really lasting harm to many communities, specifically Black, Latine, and Indigenous communities. Yeah, next slide, please. And you might be wondering, like, who has put Prop 36 on the ballot? Who's funding this? So these are some of the biggest funders of Prop 36. You can see Target, Walmart, Macy's is up here. And yeah, I see my time is up, so I will wrap up in just a minute. But yeah, we have to think about, these certain politicians, these big retailers who really just care about protecting their power, protecting their profits, and they don't really care about what happens when prisons and jails are overcrowded, right? Their focus is on protecting the status quo, regardless of how deeply incarceration harms our communities. And so just the last slide I'll put up here is that we are going to be door knocking and phone banking and are really looking for a lot of help with this. The other side always has more money. Prop 36 is really well funded. And the way that we're going to defeat this is by talking to voters one-on-one. So I will drop these links in the chat. If folks are able to come out, we have, weekend in-person door knocks and then weeknight virtual phone banks. But yeah, happy to take any questions. And if I'm not sure of the answer, I can point folks to articles or ask around. Thank you.
We do have one question in the chat right now from Betsy asking what percent of people are coming out of prison, have no housing to go to. It's a three-part question, but I'll start off with the first part.
Yeah, I don't know that number off the top of my head, but I could see if there's an article I can find about that. And yeah, I'm not sure about the second question around how much of the 800 million has gone into expanding affordable housing choices. Yeah, and then crime prevention sounds very vague. What's the correlation of being homeless to violent crime recidivism? I'm not quite sure what the third question is asking about. Yeah, if Betsy, you're able to clarify that question, that would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. So I know that, this is not, to me, this is not just about people coming out of prison, although that's the targeted, that's like the focus of your work, it sounds like. And certainly all of us are none. So what I'm asking is, there's just all this kind of like buzz and fear mongering around crime rates. And I appreciate your saying, look, it just depends on what year you start in, or if you, like, when you really understand what violent crime is, there's more to it. But these arguments about crime rates going up have been used in 3 different recall campaigns here in Alameda County against people of color, the district attorney, state senate, and mayor. So I just feel like I want to know more about the logic or lack of logic that the proponents of Prop 36, do I have it right? The Walmarts, the Target, the Sheriff's Association. I guess I feel like I would like to know. I believe you, but I'd like to know more details, because this same kind of manipulation of crime data goes on across multiple other issues, from like why we shouldn't have affordable housing in certain places, or why we have to do the sweeps of camps, So I guess I'm encouraging some deeper, not necessarily you, but tearing apart of these. Is there in fact any relationship between being homeless, coming back from prison, and crime rates increasing? And there might be, but I'd really like to take it apart. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I will say we're not a housing focused organization, so I can try to look up some articles or resources that might better answer your questions. But just in regards to the crime rates part of what you said, I do kind of want to separate out, the crime rates, like the graph that I showed on the screen, which is to show that, yeah, first of all, I think there has been in the past few years a lot of over-reporting on crime through news channels, and that is kind of sparking people's fears. And I do just want to debunk that for a second, because we know that overall crime rates are low compared to previous decades. Now I want to talk about how people feel, because I think that's also important. And if people aren't feeling safe in their communities, then we need to do something to change that. And that might be related to those crime rates. It might be related to how, what people are watching on the news or not. But I think Prop 36 and our stance on Prop 36 is also to be serious about safety, because oftentimes politicians will put forward these like quick fixes that they think will make them look good, that will make, California look tough on crime, quote unquote. But really, we're not seeing the results that they claim these measures will have. And really, if we want to make our communities safer, it's about getting to those root causes of crime and investing in things like, mental health resources, affordable housing, well-paying jobs, quality education, things like that. Those are how we, get to those root causes and stop crime from happening in the first place. And same with these, diversion programs. They're about lowering those recidivism rates so that people don't go back and commit more crimes once they go through these diversion programs. So I think, our overall goal is to get serious about safety and to actually find evidence-based solutions that work. But just to say that, yeah, Prop 36 is not an evidence-based solution. It's more of like a reactionary measure that politicians are putting out and retail corporations are putting out to, have like a sort of quick fix.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer some questions, explain some of the context behind it. I know we have one more question from Guillermina. I know we're running a little tight on time, so Guillermina, if you don't mind writing it in the chat just so we could answer it there.
Gracias, Ana, por tu presentación. Creo que es muy importante lo que acabas de decir. Es una curita solamente lo que quieren hacer con esta proposición. Yo he sido parte de San Francisco Rising por muchísimos años, por más de 10 años, y sí somos muy cuidadosas en escoger las proposiciones e investigar. A mí me gustaría organizar un grupo para ir a tocar puertas y hacer énfasis en esta proposición 36 para apoyar, porque sabemos que nosotros como trabajadoras del hogar y jornaleros somos los más afectados con estas propuestas que acaban de presentar. Entonces, estoy muy comprometida para trabajar junto contigo, Sana, y mandar un grupo de trabajadoras, trabajadores para que toquemos puertas. Gracias, Juan.
No, gracias a usted. And with that, I know we're running really tight on time, so I'm going to hand it on over to Lihia, but I know Sana mentioned it earlier, and I think they posted it in the chat, opportunities to phone bank or knock doors. So we'll rebump that up, and I hand it on over to Lihia.
Yeah. Hi again. So this is moment to take action. So we would like to know what you're gonna do this year to get out the vote and work on the elections. If you can share that on the chat, would be great. And also, I want to thank everybody that is here, that took their time to come and learn about the propositions. This is great. And thank you for asking the questions and all the presentations. This is really good. And also, it's not just you voting, but what you're planning to do to get at least 5 voters to vote according to what we want. Anyone wanted to share? Hey, don't forget to vote. Yeah, go ahead.
Will the recording be available soon?
Yes, probably by Monday.
By Monday. Okay, thank you. I had to miss them. I'm really sorry. How do I get it? Do I go on the CARA?
Yeah, go on the CARA website. We'll for sure have it, and some of the other groups might as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your participation, and don't forget to vote.
We have a final video now.
Vote. Democracy in the house and the city. Vote, vote, vote. Raise up your hands and vote, vote, vote. You better take a stand. Yeah, vote, vote, vote. You can make a game plan. Vote, vote, vote. The future is in your hands. Back in the day, we had kings and queens. We had to beg them if we wanted anything. A dictator doesn't get elected, that's autocracy. The people are in charge here, let's hear it for democracy. Your beliefs really matter, it's important to express them. Vote, vote, voting is the best way to profess them. If nobody votes, then a few will decide. Speak your mind with your vote, yeah. Go and do it nationwide. Around the nation. Vote, vote, vote. Raise up your hands and vote, vote, vote. You better take a stand in. Vote, vote, vote. You can make the game plan. Vote, vote, vote. The future is in your hands. Vote, vote, vote. Raise up your hands and vote, vote, vote. You better take a stand in. Vote, vote, vote. You can make a game plan. Vote, vote, vote. The future is in your hands. It's in your hands. You can vote for the government when you turn 18, but before that, you can still vote for other things, class president or your favorite TV show. What's eat for lunch or the greatest sports role? Your voice can be heard. All you gotta do is use it. Tell a politician what you think. I bet they'll listen to it. Kids these days have a lot to say, and the world of tomorrow is created today. Do you have a point of view? Yo, who's repping it? Do you see my vote dance? Yeah, I'm high stepping it. You wanna be the one who didn't speak up? What new ideas will you dream up? Did you ever think, hey, who made that rule? Voting is democracy's most powerful tool.
Read about the issues and choose a favorite candidate.
You may be a kid, but I know that you can handle it. Raise up your hands in. You better take a stand in. You can make the game plan. Yeah, the future is in your hands. Who's gonna vote? Me, that's who. What we gonna vote? It's the right thing to do. What we gonna vote? Every time we get a chance. After you vote, do the democracy dance. Who's gonna vote? Me, that's who. What we gonna vote? It's the right thing to do. What we gonna vote? Every time we get a chance. After you vote, do the democracy dance. Vote, vote, vote. Raise up your hands in. Vote, vote, vote. You better take a stand in. Vote, vote, vote. You can make the game plan. Vote, vote, vote. The future is in your hands. Who's gonna vote?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.